I said, why have I put myself down for this one? It's actually a bigger topic than we think, dry eye management. And as you can see here, the figures say for themselves, the prevalence is 20 to 50% of the population. And some say, 30 to 60% of our office workers will suffer. And that's probably not unsurprising because, we're all staring at screens. We're all, taking very few breaks, and we're not staring at screens. We're going home and looking up our laptop and our phones and Facebook, and we're lying in bed and we're doing the very same all over again. So it's kind of probably 16, 18 hours a day probably on a screen of some sort. And I'm sorry to say that 70% of possibly our older population, and I'll get to that in a little bit more detail because there's more to it than just because we're getting older. There's more going on with our general health, as you probably know as you get older. But it is a bit of a dumb name, and I looked up pictures of dumb animals, and that came up. Because a lot of you will say, well, actually, my eye waters. It's irritable. Why on earth is he calling it dry? That's a dumb thing. So actually it is, and I think it would be nice when we could think of something. It's more of a tear film instability. That's what it is, than it is a dry eye. So it's a concoction of lots of things. And as I say, dry eyes is unfortunately not the best name for it. There's two definitions. We have a very complicated definition that came out in 2017, but it's actually in my opinion, brilliantly summarizes what dry eye is. To keep it simple, it's simply that the tears are unable to provide adequate lubrication. But actually the formal one is quite useful because we all weren't too sure, this is more for clinicians, where to start. And it gave us a framework of where to start. It gave us clinicians a kind of a toolbox approach to go from let's start here, here, and here. And I'll read it out, but don't worry about it too much. But it's a multifactorial disease, and I think that's one of the most important words that's said, of the ocular surface, characterized by a loss of homeostasis of the tear film, accompanied by ocular symptoms in which the tear film instability and hyperosmolarity, ocular surface inflammation and damage, and neurosensory abnormalities play etiological roles. There's a lot there, but actually there's an awful lot for us that helps us get to the root cause of what it is. For you coming into us, you just tend to say some of these things. They're stinging, my eyes are sensitive to light, they can be red cosmetically. It's as if there's something in your eye some days. You wake up in the morning with them a bit gritty, a bit gravelly, or as the day goes on, you get blurriness and you're not too sure. Difficulty with night driving. There's other reasons for that, as you know, but that's one of the ones. It's very interesting. If you get someone that presents to you with significant front surface irritation of their eye, they can, from the chart in my room and the other consultants, they can't see the top line of the chart. And you lubricate them up with good drops, get them sorted, get them back 6 weeks later, they can read the bottom line. It's quite a bit. Our ocular surface has much more of an impact than I think we realise. And sometimes I think the problem is, and I'll get to that a little bit later, it's how often we should use the drops, the type of drop to use, and all of these things. But again, watery eyes and tired eyes. We often say, my eyes are tired. Complications, what other complications can come through the door to us here? It's not uncommon to get eye infections, ulcers and scarring. Granted, they tend to be contact lens related, those ones. This report that gave the definition I showed earlier, the Jews 2 report, also indicated that it has a huge impact on our quality of life. Sorry, that's what those words, the QOL mean. And as much of an impact as having heart disease, that's a significant quality of life impact. And that's what came out of one of the sub-reports that they wrote. anxiety, and of course it's a healthcare cost. It's one of our biggest presentations of people. I'm going to come back to this big slide. But really what I was trying to say, and I'll come back to in a moment, is there's two main components. The tears evaporate away, and that leads a problem. But we don't have enough tears, so we're deficient. So I just really was putting it up for this more than anything else, because this is the core of what we're trying to solve. It's mostly this evaporation. Our tears are disappearing away, and they're evaporating away for reasons I'll come to in a moment. This is an example of a tear there. This is the base and the top. And see, if this bit disappears away, you've got these little areas here, and this is what's causing the irritation. These little, you're much more nearer to the corneal, to the nerves, and so the tears are moving away. So we've got to keep this thickness, and that's why certain drops help here, certain drops help here, certain drops help this area. There's many other causes. Surgery, not often cataract surgery, but you may have, there's different types of surgery, I'll go to it. Contact lenses can result in problems. Cornea, things on our cornea. Inflammation, very big topic, that one, I'll come back to that. Our eyelid disorders, palsies, medication, and our own general health. So if I go into those very briefly, individually. Surgery, those, not everyone by any means, but often people who've had LASIK surgery will complain of the eyes feeling dry and irritable afterwards. Some people who've had surgery due to glaucoma because they need to have a drainage area put in the upper part of the eye. That leaves that area a little bit bumpy. That will obviously leave an area of irritation. Contact lenses, overwearing our contact lenses, or the lenses just simply not fitting properly. With the contact lenses, I would just look at refitting the person, or doing more. There's more interesting contact lenses out there, ones that vault the cornea. We call them scleral contact lenses. They work very well now, especially for people with dry eye. Ortho K contact lenses are useful if someone finds during the day they can't wear their contact lenses, so we give them those lenses. They put them in at night, and they take them out in the morning, and they see without any glasses or contact lenses. And we fit those as well. They can work quite well for dry eye. The cornea itself, as I said, there can be some things that go on the cornea. We call them certain dystrophies. You can have keratoconus, which is a missshaping of the front of the cornea. You can have little tissue growing on the side and the white of the eye or growing onto the eye. The first one's called penguecula, and the second one's called pterygium, and these are little bits of excess tissue that's growing on the eye. And of course that causes the eye to be irritable. So that will have someone present saying my eye is red because it's more vascularized that area. It's irritable, and then they will have to solve that. That's not that easy to solve. Sometimes if it's very bad, those little excess bits of tissue that can be surgically removed, but sometimes it's not bad enough. The best option but with some of those things that I've talked about is either surgery or lubricants. They're the main ones. Inflammation. Inflammation is very key, and I'll come back to it. If your eyes get dry, inflammatory cells are released, and it's a whole cyclical process, and it's trying to break that cycle. And the inflammation isn't always localized to the eye. We have inflammation within us, and that's why I want to mention this. So our gut health, there can be low level chronic inflammation going on there. We may be taking too much omega-6 or vegetable oils, that kind of thing. Too little omega-3, not enough fish oil, walnuts, seeds, we might be having enough of that. And we know exercise is good for us, and that can bring down inflammation. We may be on an inflammatory diet without thinking. Processed foods, stuff we buy somewhere that's a ready meal, all these things, they all are inflammation. So all these things contribute to the eye not feeling happy. Not enough vitamin A, and we know where to get that from our carrots, liver, and broccoli. These all play a role. And so to help with that, I say we all should look at our diet as well and look at the levels of essential fatty acids, the omega-3 that we're taking, and bring down processed foods. And there's certain supplements I'll talk about. You probably know my wife Joanna is our nutritionist, so I told her I would only have one slide on this because she's the expert, not me, and so I'm going to leave her. If anybody wants extra advice on that, she will be the one. I'm coming back to the more localized inflammation, and if the tear is becoming unstable, and what I mean there is if that tear layer I showed you gets thinner and thinner, that results in as I said, when it gets to the bottom part, you complain your eyes are irritable. You say your eyes are irritable, the eye gets stressed, that means inflammatory cells are released and the eye gets red and the whole thing is upset. And then you have this word, inflammation. So if we keep putting just lubricating drops in, which at times some of them can help, you still keep going around and we don't get anywhere. You often find someone coming in and say, I tried drops, but they don't really help. I'm not really getting anywhere with them. So you sometimes have to get rid of the inflammation, put a stop to that. And once we put a stop to that, then we can hopefully then deal with the symptoms here. It's easier said than done. And with that, we can look at various eye drops, supplements, but then we may need to get rid of the inflammation, look at the medical side, so some soft steroids, like a short course, 1 week, 2 week course of what we call FML, fluoromethanol, immunosuppressants, and things like that to kind of help stimulate the system. Then another major, and probably one of the major disorders, as I said, with dry eye is it's evaporative, and there's not enough. The tears, they're evaporating away because the lipid layer of it is just not sufficient to keep that layer nice and thick. And the primary cause of that, probably the most frequent thing I come across when I sit here at the chair and on my slit lamp, my microscope, this is what I look at, blepharitis. So these are lashes that are nice and clean and straightforward. Everybody's not this bad, don't worry, but it's a form of that. You want to grade it 4, this is 4, and there's grade 1 to 4. But actually, that's what you're up against. And so the blepharitis is pretty much an inflammation of this lid margin due to all of this stuff all along here. And that can be quite severe, and it can even be like what we call a Demodex that gets built up along here. And this results in these glands here on the base of our lids getting blocked. And if these get blocked, all the oils just can't make their way out. And so there's a couple of things you've got to do to try and manage it. We want to clean this area first. So to do that, we need to first heat it to soften this area. So a few of you know if I've recommended eye bags and things like that to help heat that area. We can chat about this afterwards. Putting a heat bag on this area will heat and soften this area. And then you can use a little wipe to wipe the debris away. And a lot of these wipes, some of the wipes, if it's red and inflamed, it's good if they have tea tree oil in them, because they have an anti-inflammatory component to them. If it's not too bad, then just a good medical wipe to clear that area away is important. But then we need to try and unblock these pores here as well. So you want to heat this area for a period of time. And then you want to massage the lower lid area. And then by massaging the lower lid, you're hopefully you've softened the lipid that's blocked here. And then it comes out, and then you just wipe it away. And that's really, the heating therapy and using the wipes on a regular basis is very important. This condition, blepharitis, it's a chronic condition. There's no silver bullet. I can't say to people, here you go, I'll treat it and it'll be done in a week. It won't. You have to regularly manage it. So many people, I use this little guy here, you put one of these sponges on here, and it's like getting your teeth cleaned, and you just go along here, and it's an electronic little bar on the top of it, and you just go along and you remove it away. So it kind of gets people started, which works quite well. And then you come back at it probably every 3 or 6 months for people to make sure you're keeping that area clean, because it's a continual thing that just doesn't go away. It just needs managing, like we brush our teeth, etc. You just need to keep at it. And again, if it's very red or very irritable, we will probably need to go look at antibiotics for that to help with it. Topical one if it's not too bad, but if it's very bad and quite recurrent and you had a history of styes when you were younger or things like that, you may want an oral antibiotic. And you often find that's the case if people have certain skin conditions or dry skin or rosacea. They often will need an oral antibiotic for 3 to 6 months, and they may have to then dip back into it every so often. So that has to be treated. This is a little bit of a summary just of what I said, because I often find when I do tell people I need to write down, because there's a few things to remember: heating it away, massaging, and wiping it away. And as I said, if it's very concentrated, using tea tree oil wipes. And again, if it's in severe cases, if it's feeling inflamed, some steroids, or as I said, some systemic oral antibiotics. But I don't want to make people they go dear, but actually it is worth knowing it is a long-term condition. There is no absolute instant cure. I've touched on this earlier as well, evaporative, but I just thought I'd show you as where I said that these little meibomian glands get blocked. And this is an example of them blocked. I think some of you maybe remember me holding one of these on either side of your lids and squeezing. And when I squeeze, then we squeeze it. And if it looks quite thick and toothpastey, I know it's blocked. And that's when you definitely have to use a heat treatment and go for it that way. If it comes out quite well, we know it's probably the problem isn't evaporative. This is quite a really useful test I do on anyone. And it works very well. So we kind of know we've got to look at something else. Newer drops, lubricating drops. As I said, there's plenty of them out there. I'll come to them a little later. And it's always difficult for you guys to know which ones to pick up and which ones to go for. As I said, and it's a little bit subjective as well, but the main reason of them is to kind of mimic your tear layer, as I said. Some of them have anti-inflammatory, and some of them have protective mechanisms on the cells of the surface of the cornea. Some of them have vitamin A, will help stabilize the tear film and flush toxins away. Some will help moisturize the eye. It's a little bit subjective, and I'll come back to that. Other minor causes of dry eye, it can be that our lids get a little bit floppier, perhaps as we get older. You can have lashes that turn in, and sometimes we have to remove those, and they can cause the eye to be irritable. And again, sometimes the lashes turning out again can cause the eye to be problematic. I talked about tear deficiency, not enough tears. We can stimulate that. That can be stimulated with immunosuppressants. But actually, also we can, if the eye is looking not inflamed and quite quiet looking, we can put little plugs in there into the area. We call these punctum plugs, and we just insert it very small. And these are very clever nowadays. I've just had new ones delivered, and we can just one fit. We don't even have to work the measurements out now. You just pop it in, and it goes exactly to the size you want. And that can, people find that sometimes they can be quite easy. And they're easy removable as well, because they've got a little top on them there, so they just sit at the top there, and then you can just remove them away if someone's finding they're not helpful or they're irritating them. But in most cases, they can work quite well. Again, you just want to make sure the eye, there's nothing else, there's no infections or inflammation there, because you don't want to keep those, you want to get rid of those tears if they're in there. Some facial palsies that can result in if you have a stroke, and obviously that means you can't cover your whole eye properly. That can cause a problem. Some of the medications we're taking nowadays, antihistamines, HRT, antidepressants, blood pressure medication. If any of you are suffering with glaucoma and are taking glaucoma drops, there are a lot of glaucoma drops have the preservative in them, and you'll be taking those once a day, maybe twice a day, and they all increase what we call the preservative load. Some medications that we use for apnea, Parkinson's disease, another one that we often find quite dry eye there. And of course, I know we come back to this quite a bit. If we suffer with rheumatoid arthritis, I'm afraid we like to blame age for everything, but as we get a little bit older, these things can affect our systems. Ladies more than men, I'm afraid, which actually is probably judged by the audience sitting here today. And diabetic patients as well. So eye drops, how do they work? Well, we like them to moisturize the eye. And again, as I talked about this, when we looked at the definition, if the eyes feel sorry for themselves, and then osmolarity of the eye increases. So we want to reduce that, because what happens is when the osmolarity increases, the tears evaporate and those surface cells get damaged. So that's quite a component to this. Which is best? It is subjective. I'll often find somebody who say, I prefer that one, I prefer that one, I prefer that one. And we sometimes have to try some different things. Drops containing, as I said, lipid which mimic the tear. But one of the most important things that we've definitely come across in the last 5 years is that the drops are preservative free. We absolutely know that keeping the drops preservative free, especially people who require them fairly frequently, is essential. Because having a preservative, as I said, just adds to the loading, which is good. They brought out newer bottles which last longer and still are preservative free, whereas before you would have had to get them in a little separate vials, whereas now they can get them in larger bottles due to how they've designed the delivery system. The future of these eye drops, they're looking at it all the time. We want the eye drop to deliver, to get there better, and having an emulsion, like a tiny nano emulsion drop, getting as no oil and water don't mix, so it's getting that working together, getting that mixture on the eye is important. Some of these are available outside the country and they're not yet here. We've got newer drops called Lacropep and Securia. The Lacropep is a protein found in our tears, so when that comes to market, that's supposed to be going to be very good for helping lubricate our cornea. Securia talks about if we've got the deficiency in the tears, we want to stimulate our tears. And likewise, the other one, Cyclosol, is another one too. And if that's to improve, we find cyclosporin is quite good, but a lot of people don't get on with it, so it's getting it in a format that people can take. That would be very good as well. Our own blood, that's been used now. You can get a blood draw done. Your blood is sent off somewhere, and it's sent back to your house frozen, and you take it in separate little vials, and of course that's supposed to be very good in quite severe cases, because it's got obviously the vitamin A protein, which is wound healing and a lubrication dimension to it. We're looking at stem cell therapy, and as I've said, we're also looking at this protein lubricin which facilitates, again, lubrication. It comes back to the lubrication. Like I said in my simple definition, the whole idea is we need a good quality drop. And it's finding something that is as close to the eye as possible and what's there. And the proteins that help lubricate the eye is essential. And this particular protein, lubricin, is often decreased in dry eye patients. It's been used in orthopedics at the moment, and it's hopefully going to be then available for us as a dry eye drop as well. And that's about it. So before I went run through of it, there's a lot to take in there, because I think there's quite a lot going on in dry eye. As I said, it's not just a silver bullet, which we like to do, but I think we got to look at all aspects, from minding the lids, lashes, to our own general health, inflammation, etc. That's probably.
How often must we use these things?
Yeah.
Because I never know. I had a course from you, and I thought, I don't know how to do it. Shall I just leave it or what? Is it a regular thing?
Yeah.
I had these.
This one here.
And the hypo.
This one.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, depending on the dryness of your eye, the general rule of thought is. Yes, the general rule of thought is about four times a day. Again, depending on what you have, and so mid-morning.
But you're not suffering from it,
Well, you're not suffering from it, you can go without.
Oh,
you can. And I think the difficulty is, the trouble is, it doesn't warn you. Then you have 2 days of your eyes feeling really irritable and you're back again.
Yeah.
So it's a question of saying, maybe perhaps just regularly taking it on a regular basis is no bad thing, because it's keeping that eye, especially if it gets to stages feeling quite happy. Because when it gets to an unhappy stage, where that tear film layer goes down, we may be heading back to the inflammation zone that I talked about earlier. So I think it's.
When I'm using one of those masks,
that's very helpful. Yeah, that's very good.
And hot water.
Yeah. Yes. The heat mask is very. I really like the heat mask, because you see that's coming back to, as I said to you, which is, I think, probably 60 to 70% of the problem is evaporative. So if we can keep the oils all the time coming out by heating them, that really helps.
Just the doctor said to me, it's a chronic condition for life. So I just thought I got to put drops in every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not wrong with this, like what I said. We do realise this is a chronic condition. It doesn't just go away. And I think people will have good days and bad days, but that ties in with your own general health. You'll have good days and bad days. And that's why I think the general health aspect is important. How we are, how we feel. I know if I'm tired and run down, my eyes are tired and run down. Regularly will tie you quite well with me. And you'll often find if you're tired and run down, you may get a sty. And so it all does, there's markers there that point to us that tell us what's going on.
How do we find out exactly what's causing our particular problem? Because our problems will be different for everybody. I was told I've got dry eyes, but I don't know exactly why I might have dry eyes, but mine look very watery. But how do we find out what's lying?
I think you need to speak to your optometrist, really, because I think we're probably best placed to look at it. One, we'll ask plenty of questions, because again, it could be general health, it could be your medications, it may not be that, it could just be that those oils, that they're blocked a little bit. It could be you don't have enough tears. So as I said, there's a dozen things.